Whenever a positive moment arrives for Meghan, whom we refer to respectfully as Sussex, we have come to expect a familiar, predictable pattern from the tabloids and from certain individuals who have turned their connection to her into a permanent media hustle. This latest situation involving Thomas Markle is no different, and when you look closely at the timing, the medical inconsistencies, the emotional manipulation, and the strategically crafted public narratives, it becomes almost impossible to believe this is just coincidence. Instead, it appears to be yet another instance of the tabloid machine manufacturing a storyline designed to drown out Sussex's accomplishments, distract from her positive press, and frame her in the harshest, most unreasonable way possible. The behavior is repetitive, transparent, and increasingly desperate, and the people following these stories year after year are starting to see right through it. To begin, let us analyze the medical claims surrounding Thomas Markle's reported surgery. The tabloids circulated a sensational version of the story, a sudden amputation followed by being placed in intensive care, implying extreme medical urgency. Yet the images and descriptions that followed did not match what one would realistically expect from a fresh major surgical procedure. A person who has just undergone an amputation, especially someone older with health complications, does not simply sit up comfortably in a chair, speaking clearly, appearing groomed, and seemingly without the standard equipment we associate with post-operative care. After a major operation, patients are almost always seen with visible bandages, monitored through IV drips, supported by oxygen devices, surrounded by hospital equipment, and limited in movement. None of that was evident in the narrative being pushed. It does not take a medical professional to look at the visual presentation and notice the mismatch. Even the idea that someone would be in an intensive care ward, but also be ready for photos and interviews, is contradictory to how hospitals operate. Intensive care is not a place for publicity. It is a place for stabilization, monitoring, and controlled access. Then we examine the claims about physical therapy. Some reports implied that Thomas had already begun rehabilitation, which provides a critical clue about the real timeline, because physical therapy typically begins later in the recovery process, not within a day or two of a major amputation. If therapy has started, the operation did not happen last week, as the tabloids dramatically implied. This means the surgical event likely happened earlier, during a moment that was less convenient for tabloid exploitation. And that is an important detail, because tabloids are known to hold stories and release them on strategically chosen dates to manipulate public emotions. It is not far-fetched at all to believe that an operation could have taken place weeks earlier, during a calmer news cycle. And the story was then held in waiting until Sussex had something positive happening in her life. The timing points directly to that. Now let us look at that timing, because it is the strongest indicator of manipulation. Sussex released her holiday special on Netflix, a warm, uplifting production designed to spread joy, reflection, positivity, and the festive spirit. This should have been a moment where her creative work could be received on its own merit. Instead, the tabloids immediately dropped a dramatic story about her estranged father, using emotionally loaded language and insinuations to shift the narrative. And it happened within hours of the positive coverage building around the show. This is not new behavior. This is a textbook pattern. For years, whenever Sussex launches a project, receives praise, announces a partnership, wins an award, or simply shares a personal achievement, the tabloids respond with some dramatic counter-story involving her family or the royal institution. It is almost like a timer goes off, and some negative narrative is pulled out of a drawer and thrown into the cycle. It is not coincidence anymore. It is a strategy, a rhythm, an established playbook. The question we must ask is, who benefits from framing the story this way? The tabloids benefit enormously because stories about Sussex generate engagement. Stories that combine health scares, family estrangement, moral outrage, and emotional manipulation generate even more engagement. These publications do not care about the well-being of the individuals involved. They care about the headlines, the clicks, the comments, and the financial reward that comes from stirring up controversy. Thomas Markle, who has repeatedly participated in interviews, sold stories, and engaged with the media at moments when it could harm his daughter, benefits as well. Each time he allows himself to be used in this way, he gets renewed attention, sympathy from the anti-Sussex crowd, and positioning as a victim in a story where he has long played an active role. Then we have to consider the impact on Sussex herself. This kind of manipulated narrative is designed to sabotage her success by distracting from her accomplishments, painting her as cold or uncaring, and trying to force her into a moral box where she is blamed no matter what she does. If she responds privately, the tabloids claim she did nothing. If she responds publicly, they accuse her of making it about herself. If she does not respond at all, they frame it as neglect. In every scenario, the tabloids attempt to control the frame. It is a no-win situation deliberately constructed to keep her on the defensive while they profit from the outrage. And yet, the Sussex team continues to handle these situations with dignity and privacy, refusing to feed the spectacle. That alone frustrates the tabloids because they depend on public messiness to keep the story alive. Let us also consider the nature of the visual narrative being promoted. The photographs and footage used by the tabloids, showing a seemingly stable Thomas Markle in a controlled interview setting, contradict the dramatic language used in the articles. The visuals do not match claims of emergency surgery, sudden collapse, or critical condition. Instead, they match a staged situation designed to evoke sympathy while maintaining enough ambiguity to weaponize the story against Sussex. It is worth asking why a man who supposedly faced a life-threatening medical emergency would be participating in media narratives so quickly. It is worth asking why the tabloids appear to have access to these images faster than medical updates can be verified. And it is worth asking why the story was released with such perfect timing to overshadow a positive moment in Sussex's professional life. Now, let us address the emotional manipulation at play. The tabloids want viewers to feel immediate empathy for Thomas, while feeling anger and disappointment towards Sussex. They push a narrative that insinuates she has a moral obligation to publicly respond, ignoring the real-life complexities of estranged relationships, especially when those relationships have been exploited repeatedly for public humiliation. They want the audience to react, not think. But when we stop to think, the inconsistencies become glaring. The tabloids do not ask why Thomas participates in these stories. They do not ask why these dramatic moments always align with her achievements. They do not ask why the medical details do not add up. They simply push a narrative that fuels outrage because outrage is profitable. Once you recognize this pattern, you cannot unsee it. The truth is, Sussex is not responsible for the tabloid decisions of grown adults. She is not responsible for the timing of media stories fabricated by individuals who have repeatedly chosen the spotlight over their own dignity. She is not responsible for validating a narrative created by publications that have spent years targeting her with obsessive negativity. The only thing she can control is her own response, and she has consistently chosen privacy and grace. That is not coldness, it is self-preservation. As we look at the broader picture, it becomes clear that this is not a story about a medical emergency. It is a story about manipulation, opportunism, and the media's ongoing attempt to derail Sussex's professional achievements. The public is smarter now. Viewers are more aware. People online are not buying the narrative as easily as before. And that scares the tabloid industry because their formula only works when the audience plays along without asking questions. So to the tabloids who continually use someone's medical situation as a weapon, enough. To those who intentionally time negative stories to overshadow Sussex's accomplishments, we see what you are doing. To those who seek sympathy while enabling the very machine that harms their own family, take accountability. And to Sussex, who continues to navigate all of this with composure, privacy, and strength, keep going. The noise will always be loud, but the truth is louder. This pattern has gone on long enough that it is no longer subtle. It is repetitive, it is transparent, and it is losing its power. People are starting to recognize the manipulation. They are questioning the timing. They are challenging the inconsistencies. And when the public stops accepting the narrative at face value, the entire strategy collapses. In the end, this latest story says far more about the desperation of the tabloids than it does about Sussex. And that is why we speak out, not to attack, but to expose the cycle, to bring clarity, and to remind viewers to think critically rather than simply absorb the drama handed to them. Because drama sells, but truth lasts longer. And in this situation, the truth is unmistakable. The timing is suspicious, the details do not align, and the story is being used to silence a woman who has every right to succeed without being dragged by manufactured family scandals.